Welcome everyone to the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. This week we've got Project Art Director from CA, Singh on. Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thank you for having me.
So, it's very rare I have character artists on, as everyone knows. There's a lot of environmental artists on here. And I suppose let's get off the bat with one thing I've really been interested in is, in your 2 cents and your opinion, why is it that it feels like character art is such a niche role? And what I mean by niche is there's a lot of environmental artist jobs in comparison. Character art's far fewer roles. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's probably just due to quantity, and it does depend on whichever company you work at. So on the Warhammer character team, I think the maximum we had was 20 character artists in-house. That was like the absolute maximum, and then you have contracts on top of that. So we got quite big, but we do make an absolute ton of unique characters. We try not to reuse too much because you have like bespoke heroes and bespoke units. But again, I think it's just quantity. You might need more environment eyes because you just have more environment stuff going on. I mean, when you think about most games, your character is probably like 5 to 10% of the screen, and the rest of the screen is all environment. So where does a lot of the effort want to go is in the environment, just to make sure all kind of works out well and looks good.
So you mentioned with the Warhammer team. Now you guys have got like a reputation having a very killer team, like a really talented bunch. Now with building a team, what is it you look for in character artists? Now, when I say this, with environment artists, when I've spoken to people in hiring positions, they call out stuff like, showing a particular skill set or, eyes for composition or whatever it might be. So when you're like looking at character artists, what's them little special qualities you look for?
I think it's, again, I've got to be wary what I say because I think it's different for each hiring manager. Mm-hmm. And for me specifically, it's, does their personality show in their art? Obviously, is their art of a capable level to kind of fit within our team? And it's those 2 things I look for in their work. Everything else is kind of the personality of the artist themselves, because you kind of want somebody with that team fit and that team dynamic, and somebody who, I wouldn't say introverted, I don't think that's the right word, but someone who is capable of communicating with all the different teams, like the environment team or the VFX team or animation team, because we do collaborate quite a lot. And I'll always go for someone who is really good at what they do, has interest in art, but is also a really good communicator, because I think the biggest pitfall, from my experience in a lot of different companies, isn't necessarily how good each artist or each individual is, it's communication. People struggle, or teams struggle to communicate with each other, and that ultimately leads to a lot of breakdown. And I think good art is absolutely fantastic, but you need a good communicator to go with that.
Yeah, because that gets lost, doesn't it, quite a lot? Like, everyone focuses so hard on their, like, hard skills to be able to, like, make the perfect asset. But the soft skills get forgot about, don't they?
Exactly. It's without sounding too derogatory, you could be the best artist in the world, but if you're a bit of an arsehole, I don't want to work with you, because you'll struggle to fit in with the team, and you'll struggle to fit in with everyone else in the department. And it's okay saying, well, yeah, but I'm amazing art. It's like, well, that's only part of it. At least for our team, you're not just... The chances of you just sitting there with your headphones on and just making art all day, no. You might do that for half your day, but you need to speak to a lot of other people, like the animation team, to make sure that your character kind of works within their requirements, making sure that you've got an idea of what they want to do with the character and how they see the proportions of a character as well, because it is ultimately going to affect the way that character looks, as well as the tech anim team, the riggers. You want to make sure that you put things in the right places, send meshes over to them, like whips of meshes, to make sure that everything kind of works. And if you just work in that insular bubble, might be great for a portfolio piece that you're working on for ArtStation, but as part of game development, it doesn't work.
Well, it's like, I forget who told me this, or like mentioned. I know it's probably like a cliche at this point, but it's when someone said to me that you're good game developers and you have good artists, and like you need one and not the other. And I was like, oh, actually, that pretty much sums up everything that we're talking about. Like, you're both a competent artist, maybe not even the best, but you're a competent artist, and you're a really good person, and you work well as a team. And then you get the people who do both, who are incredible artists and amazing communicators, and they rule the world essentially. Actually, it's funny you mentioned you don't want to work with assholes, because I guess I know this. People say this a lot, but this industry is small. People know
Yeah.
everybody. Like, it's been
Yeah.
very odd for me. Just like, yeah, I know one friend, and actually I know this person a CA, and then suddenly there's like 5, 6 people I know of a CA, and I've never met them. I just know them through friends. And I'm like, oh god, that's one person. Okay, let's now expand that out to my whole sort of spiderweb network. And it's like, oh god, this industry's tiny.
Well, I mean, the reason I got to CA is because my hiring manager worked with me at Jagex. So it's like he already knew me. So he knew my portfolio. He knew what I was capable of, and he knew that I worked like my spare time to get my portfolio up to scratch. And that sort of helped me with my role here. But yeah, it is a very small industry, and you can burn bridges really quickly. And you'll be amazed at how many people, you might look at someone's portfolio, and then someone else will say, "Oh, it's that person. Oh, I used to work with that person." Just be careful. Their personality is a bit weird, or like they don't really play ball with other people. And it is like you said, you're a game developer first and an artist second. And I think you obviously still want to hire someone who is incredibly capable as an artist. But it's not just how capable they are coming in. It's one of the reasons why we deal with a lot of trainees. It's how much potential they have going forwards. And it's like you might have an artist who has kind of stagnated their skill set and they've not really developed any further than they might, than they could. Whereas you might have one artist who might be of a lower skill level, but you see the jump from their work each time they create a new piece just gets better and better and better. And it's like, okay, that person, absolute, development potential right there. Whereas some people kind of stagnate, and it's like, okay, in the long term, and it is that long term feel of how good is that person going to be for your team in the long run. Because it's a project. It's never one or two individual pieces. It's an entire project they're working on.
What are some of the hallmarks of them people who are like, okay, maybe their level isn't quite up to scratch yet, but they could be amazing? Like how could you spot that sort of talent? Like what sort of is it? I'm guessing there's some like like I said, hallmarks of it which stand out to you.
I mean, you never get it 100% right. I think that the last time we hired a character artist was probably, I think it was 2.5 years ago. And she'd just come out of university, but she was an illustrator for 10 years. So she's was more of like a mature student at university, and then she went into 3D art because she was like, I'm kind of, I want to try something new, which is quite interesting to me. But then you see her art, and it's like, okay, this is good, this has got potential. You meet her, and it was like, wow, you are an amazing personality, and I can see you leading a team in the future, or going to senior level very quickly. And in the last 2.5 years, she's become one of the most valuable members of the team by far, because she'll go out and communicate with people, and she doesn't need my permission to do it. She'll just go do it, come back, speak to the right people, and can manage herself without constantly being told what to do. And that is just super useful. It's incredibly useful in one of our teams. Whereas you've got some artists who are amazing at art, but then the communication skills suffer, and it's that balance, it's that kind of offset, and you just want to make sure that you kind of get it right. And you never get it 100% right. Like you can't read people's minds or read people's kind of future development ability. You've got to take a risk sometimes, and that's just what we do. Like, right, but most of the times we do.
So with what you're talking about, with you not having to babysit or micromanage, that people being proactive is, again, it's one. I think it's normally fear that stops people. And one of the things I say to a lot of artists is, just if you do go too far, if you do overstep your bounds, it's very easy to say, hey, take a step back, you're good where you are. It's very hard to pull somebody out of their shells, because that's where most of it comes from, right? It's just fear. It's like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to get told off. I'm scared I'm going to upset somebody, like with this. And you're right, introversion isn't the right word, but this timidness or like lack of wanting to step out of your responsibility or bounds, it is just fear, right?
I think it depends on the person. I never want to generalize. And again, like you said about being an introvert, being an introvert is fine. It's not about being the wild child of the team. It's more about having the capability to communicate when you want to. If you don't, if you want to after work go home, chill, read a book, do your own thing, that's fine. We don't expect you to kind of go out and party with the team all the time. That's not what we expect. But in the work environment, there is that expectation to have those soft skills of communication, of listening, of even things like making sure that you put things on Perforce, correctly with the correct naming conventions, that sort of stuff. Because that is one of my biggest gears that goes around, is when you've got an artist who's really good at what they do, but then they'll upload something to Perforce, and they'll have like the incorrect naming convention, and it breaks everything else. I'm just like, it would have taken you 5 minutes to check that, but you're a bit careless. It's those little things. It's you got to think of yourself as a game developer first. You are an artist, but you're an artist secondary to that. And if you do have an issue with that, then you have to consider, like, I don't know, maybe it is worth going into something where. So it's a weird way of saying it. I'm not going to say freelance because you need to be good at communicating when you're a freelancer as well. But you need to consider developing those skills as part of your core skill set. I think that's probably the right way of putting it.
It's weird. I don't know why. It's kind of like extroversion gets put on this pedestal as being a positive thing, and then introversion being the negative thing. But I don't know about you, but with this whole COVID thing, I'm like, introversion is a good thing. Like being able, so I'm a very extrovert person. It's like being able to just sit and work and not need to speak to people. Like I didn't realize just how much I was reliant on people until this whole COVID happened. I don't know what you think about
that. Yeah, absolutely. I think the big difference is it. I think assertiveness is the key thing there, and I think whether you're an extrovert or introvert, you can be assertive either way. And if you show that assertiveness without stepping on people's toes or being, difficult to work with, and when I say difficult to work with, I don't mean, oh, you're assertive, that means that you're annoying or you're going to frustrate me. It means to the point where you're an impediment to someone else's work. Then it's like, okay, step back a little bit. But most of the time, I'd prefer it when people are like that. And yeah, it's. I think COVID has changed the way people communicate with each other, and it will change the way people will communicate with each other. Personally, I would rather not see everyone work from home. I find it from a management point of view, it's an absolute pain, and things get misinterpreted very quickly over text. And like we were talking about social media. It's the same thing. You have 127 characters to express something on Twitter, and you can't get your point across. It's the same way whether you send an email. No one can see your hand gestures. No one can see whether you're smiling or whether you're frowning. No one can read you as a person when you're talking to them. And especially if you're in meetings, it's even worse because you might be in a meeting talking to someone. I guarantee you that person is probably looking at the other monitor trying to do work at the same time and is like minimizing their webcam and not even listening to people. For me personally, I think working from home is not the best, but I know a lot of people who love it. I mean, I know a lot of programmers who love working from home because they do spend a lot of time just getting their headphones on and just getting down to the nitty gritty. But I think it's each to their own. For me, I'm looking forward to being back at work and chatting to people. But it's not too bad. I'm not got it rough. I still talk to people quite easily. It's a lot harder.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons actually. It's funny you mentioned like just being on webcam. It's one of the reasons I introduced the webcam to the podcast again, because it's like you could at least read some facial expressions and gestures, and like people, when you're having a conversation with somebody, and it goes for a meeting as well, you could see when someone has something to say. You can read what their body language is and be like, okay, maybe you should pause and let this person say what they want to have to say. I found as well you're right about the communication thing. Though I found that in an office, I've worked in work environments where people are like, they'll only talk via Slack. And I'm like, you're 2 desks away from me. Like, you don't need to use Slack. Like, just come talk to me. It's like, we're going to get through this conversation in 2 minutes rather than 20 minutes trying to dissect what each of us is saying. But I'll go back to the social media thing. So we would obviously talk about this off air. So I asked you a question, and I'm still sort of deliberating on this myself. But I'm trying to work out whether I think social media encourages good or bad behavior. And the reason I asked you this was, it's kind of edgy, hot takes get rewarded with engagement, positive things, sharing good work, telling people how good they are. Like, it doesn't get the same type of response. Now, I know some of this is probably to do with we respond more to negative and positive criticism, but I know you're active on social media too. Is there something you've noticed?
It is a really difficult conversation to have, because you're always wary of pigeonholing people into stereotypes, and there are things that do irritate me on social media, but those things that irritate me might not irritate the other million artists out there who love seeing that sort of stuff. So if I had opinions on this, it would be entirely kind of personal and basically, hey, this is just what I think, but don't take it as gospel, and for God's sakes, don't tweet about it. It's like I think, like we were saying earlier, people are always happy to kind of provide a hot take about something very quickly, almost thoughtlessly. They'll just respond because they want to be part of that discussion. But when you see artists posting work asking for feedback, and it does happen, people do want feedback on the work to help get better because social media is there now for that. You don't get as much leverage because I think that's where people really have to think about what they say, and I think that kind of separates them. It's like, hey, when people actually take the time to think about what they say, I bet 50% of them would have deleted the thing that they tweeted about to share with the masses because they didn't need to say it. It was a response. It was kind of like a reaction, and not always how they feel. And it's tough because I think blaming social media or seeing social media as the negative is I don't think that's the right way. I think it's how people use it. It's like anything. It's however people utilize that platform. And unfortunately, bad news sells better than positive news. That is just why a lot of news is bad, and then you might get the fun good news at the end of the day of a group of ducks being born somewhere. It's like that is just the nature of society, and it's a shame. And I say this a lot. I'm very guilty of it. I'm not going to deny that. I want to post like more art stuff and retweet other people's art and just kind of give people visibility. Like I'll retweet people who need to kind of like share that art, or if people are looking for work, especially, it's like I've got plenty of people who follow me who might be hiring managers. So it's like, okay, I'll retweet your work and maybe they'll see it. But you fall. It's a very easy trap to fall into, and we're all guilty of it. And at the end of the day, we're human. Like we mess up, and I don't think we should hit ourselves too hard for it. It's like it happens, and you might, if you delete your tweet, I don't see why people criticize you. It's like, no, you thought about it, you took the time to do it. I probably delete most of my tweets that I post because it's like, did I need to say that? No, I didn't. Shut up, delete. It's that kind of mentality. At least you're taking ownership over the fact that you're filtering yourself and learning to filter yourself. But it's a tough one. This is something you could talk about for hours because, where do you draw the line between what your opinion is and what you should censor and how other people should censor you? It's like where does that line kind of stop? And I think for me, the artists that have got it best are the ones who just post art, and I should just post more art. But at the same time, I do love a good dog meme or like cute dog videos. So I'm just like, you know what? If I see something that tickles me or makes me laugh, I'll share it because it's like, what, everyone could kind of do with a bit of a laugh, and I kind of want to just tweet that. But I go for my followers list quite a lot, and I usually do remove quite a lot of followers who I'm like, you don't do a lot of art, I probably don't need to follow you, and then unfollow and follow. But it's never a personal thing. It's just I just want to saturate my feed more with interesting art. And if people want to message me and chat about art or other things, I'm more than kind of happy to if I've got the time, or even just sit in a hangout group as long as no one's recording it and just chat with people and make art and either sit quietly or have a conversation. That sort of stuff I'm usually fine with. But yeah, it's a big conversation. Social media, I think that's bigger than the both of us.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you said about the you filter who you're following, because I had to do the same. So before I go into game dev, I played like rugby, and I didn't really like Twitter. I never used it because all I had was like highlights from rugby, and it's like I was like, I hate Twitter. I don't really like using it. And then I basically unfollowed my whole everyone from the rugby community. I was just going through and following only art people, and suddenly I was like, oh, my Twitter feed's now really interesting and I really like it. And actually curating the people you're following, and like I said, it's not a personal thing. It's like, this is the content I want to see. I want to see art. I don't want to see whatever it might be, sport, politics, latest news. Like, I just want to see art. Try and show me that. And also, just coming back to something you mentioned is quite interesting. I guess the way we interact with each other, I guess you said yourself, you delete stuff sometimes. You look back and you go, should I have said that? No. It's like when you want to send an angry email, you write out your first draft email, then you delete it and send it the next day. And that's humility. It's us as people being able to, I guess, look at what we've written and go, okay, I should have said that. Hold my hand up, delete it, whatever. I think that's something people struggle with quite a lot. Like, just, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have said that thing or did that thing. And it's as much as deleting the tweet. It's like, or delete whatever it is, whatever message it is, or saying sorry or whatever it is. it's you can get past it quite easily, but you just got to be like kind of okay with doing it, which I don't think a lot of people are.
Yeah. I think maybe people. I think again, it's tough to know this without knowing the individual. But I think some people are good at just letting their tweets go into the wild and not thinking about them
Mm.
again. And others do reflect on what they've said and go back and filter it. So I think that it's a difference of just personality. Does that person really care what other people think of them? Yes, no, or what people think of their views. But I mean, again, like you said, it's a small industry. You do have to be careful what you say because that sort of stuff
Mm.
can come back and bite you in the arse later on down the line. And I'm sure at some point something I've said will come back and bite me in the arse later down the line. But it's like if I've said something that is genuinely offensive to people, I will delete it and apologize. And I have done that before, and it's like, you know what? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it like that or worded it that way. Delete. No fuss, because it's not worth it. But yeah, there are some people who kind of have to stick by their guns, and it's like, no, this is my Twitter. I don't want to filter anything. Blah blah blah. And it's
Mm.
like, well, yes, you don't have to have people censor you, but you can at least not necessarily be sensitive, but be conscious about what other people think and be
You can set
conscious
the
about the way you
ramifications as
use that.
well.
Yeah, and just say and set yourself to a higher standard. Be the better person if you can, and if you utilize Twitter however you want to use it, it's ultimately up to you. And I don't see it as a bad thing. I see, especially now, like we were saying with COVID, it's an outlet for people. People are at home. People don't have
Mm.
colleagues they can banter to. They can't go to the pub. They can't chat. It's like some people are literally sat at home in a small room on their own, and that is their outlet. That they're shouting into the void, and if that helps them, great. I find more often than not it probably doesn't help people. From my experience of talking to people, it's quite negative on people's mental health. But I think again, it depends on the way you use it. And I've just been trying to use mine a bit more towards art lately, with the occasional dumb joke every now and then. And it's definitely helpful. You don't have to engage in every single conversation. You don't have to engage in every massive
Mm.
tweet just because it's starting to gain leverage. It's just try your best. Understandably, I think an aspect of it is almost drug-like in terms of the way it's can be quite addictive. But just do your best to wean yourself not away from it completely. Maybe some people want to go cold turkey, but just try and be sensible with it, I guess.
So what I will say for the positive nature of Twitter is it actually informed me that you do 2D art. That's how I knew you as a 3D character artist. And then I followed you on Twitter and I was like, oh, he's he does illustration. These are really good illustrations. You're one of them rare breeds who's a killer 3D artist and a very, very, very good illustrator for character art. I suppose one thing I want to talk about is you mentioned a little bit off air about how your perception of what you're doing with your spare time's changed recently. You just dive back into that.
Yeah, so I started. I mean, I can go back further than that. I started in 2008 as an environment artist, and before that, I was a programmer. So I started in programming, went to an environment art, did environment art for a while, but then I realized I wanted to do character art. So I did character art in my spare time at home until I got a full-time role as a character artist, and then just did that for a bunch of years. And as time just became more precious, and I realized how long it would take to make a character, and just even as tech got more complicated. And again, tech scares me. So like when I hear people learning like new hair tech and new cloth sim tech and stuff, and I'm just like, I just want to sculpt everything. I just want to ZBrush everything. I don't want to think about anything else. And I've always dabbled in 2D, and it's always been dabbled. It's never been full on. And when I moved into the art director position, I was like, you know what? It's time I just did this full time, because the 3D phase of my life was fun and it was great, but is it something I want to try and keep up with? Not particularly. I've done it. I did it, and just the last character I made was last year. It took forever, and I realized I like the design aspect, and just like Twitter, I just want to get my ideas out of my brain into into like a cloud and to let it go. And that's what 2D is for me. It's like, I have an idea. It might be crap. I don't know. Let's just get it down. And maybe turn it into a concept or a sketch, and just something to develop at again. But something I've got time for and a bit more patience for, because I can't spend 9 months doing another character in my spare time. No 3D one, I'd go crazy. And it's just not my job anymore either. I deal with concept art predominantly at work anyway. I still work with the character team quite a lot, just because they're still my babies. I still love that team. But yeah, it's mainly 2D. So I thought, you know what, I'll delve into 2D full time at home and just, try and get good at it. I don't believe that ages should be a factor. Age should be a limit. And I'm mid-30s, but feel like I'm starting afresh. And you know what? Why not? Why not? I've got the time to do it. Let's go with it.
So what's that been like though? Like, did you hit any brick walls? I mean, you've kind of like, so everyone's seen that graph, the one where it's like your artistic eye versus your artistic ability, and it fluctuates. And I guess with X amount of years experience, you have the artistic eye. So did that help accelerate your development in 2D? Like, you knew what looked good and what looked bad and what looked wrong, and how light behaved and how character proportions were. All of that contributed to, I imagine, like, helping your 2D skills come along, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where something looks wrong, but you don't know why. And I think that's probably the best way to explain it, because you'll look at something, and you'll keep working on it and fiddling with it, and you're like, I can't quite put my finger on this, but I know it's wrong. And then that's when it's like, right, I'm going to put this out there and try and get some feedback on it. But yeah, that's definitely helped. I think for me, the kind of the sine wave of up and down comes from fatigue. There's always a bit of imposter syndrome. I think most artists just have imposter syndrome. I think that's a thing, that's a given. And they're all kind of happy to admit it. You go, oh, I've been in this industry 12 years. Why can't I do this shit? Why can't I draw this bloody line? But then you get over that hump fairly quickly. And then it's like, for me, it's like, okay, how can I iterate on this in a speedier method, just because I'm one of these people who will zoom in really close and kind of like nitpick over all those little lines and try and get them perfectly. But it's all learning. And I'm still having fun with it. I think the COVID stuff has kind of slowed me down, because again, you sat in front of you sat in front of your home computer all day, and then you sat in front of your home computer at night, and it's very difficult to get a break. Unfortunately, the gyms have opened again, so that's helped. But like having separate areas for you to do certain things, like this is where I go exercise, this is where I do my day job, this is where I do my enjoyment time, and this is where I do my personal work. I think losing that has definitely tired me out. I think it's, again, looking at social media, it's tired a lot of people out. So I think that's where most of it comes from now. It's just fatigue. But again, I think I've kind of accepted, and it's definitely helped. And I think when I see those tweets where people go, you know what, I know I'm not good at this, but I will get better. I like those tweets, because I think that's like an outlet of saying they've just accepted that this looks shit, but I'm going to keep going with it, and I'm going to push through it, and they're motivating themselves to do it, rather than they might get other people going, yeah, you know what, good for you, keep going, and have that additional boost of motivation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's quite good and quite healthy. So letting others kind of push you up, but also knowing how to kind of push yourself going forwards, definitely has kind of helped me, and hopefully it helps other people as well. Sorry if I'm ranting.
This is perfect, dude. I've been doing these podcasts. It's like episode 63 or something. If they could put up my ranting, like my speedy Brummie accent, then they'll be fine with you. Don't worry.
I just talk a lot. I can't help it,
dude. So with the concept art though, so your personal time before you became an art director, you a lot is developing career skills. With me, I'm an environment artist. I will develop my environment art skills. Makes sense. With the concept art, your job is you're an art director. I suppose concept art is a much better outlet for developing your art direction skills, because, like you said, you can get your ideas down much quicker. You can iterate far quicker. Do you think there's part of that too, where like by doing this concept art and illustration side of stuff, you're developing a whole different skill set, which is completely different to 3D, but overall it's growing your ability as an art director, do you think?
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing it. It's like the 3D side, you've got really good 3D character artists, you've got 3D environment artists, you've got animators, the leads, the seniors, everyone within those teams are absolutely fantastic and know what they're doing. So I don't have to actually keep an eye on what they're doing a lot of the time. It's like they're expert enough to get on with the job. For me, it's like, if I want to look at the overall vision of something and be able to iterate on something really quickly, or outline an idea really quickly in a way that makes sense for everyone to work with, as an artist, and it's clear. I think that's the key thing. these are the kind of skills that I want to work on. And I feel as though I've got other skills that I can do my job with fine, but my 2D skills is like, right, this is the skill set that I want to boost up now for my for personal development as well as my role. It's a challenge, it's a new challenge, and maybe in 10 years' time or whatever, I'll stop and do something else. I might decide to try and become an animator again. That was fun the first time, or do something different. I don't know. I think it's like this is just the thing I want to do now and focus on now and get good at and achieve something at. Like that, achieving an art director role is just achieving a role for me, but like actually doing the work every day, coming home every day and just drawing and developing those skills and seeing the progression and posting online, that is just my way of life at the minute. I don't like to stop work. I don't want to be one of those. It's weird. I don't want to be one of those art directors who doesn't still invest their time or their personal time in their art. I think some people do stop and they go, I've got to this level now. All I do is manage. I don't need to focus on art. And I don't want that. I don't want to just be the art diplomat. I want to actually be an art director. So I want to draw more. I want to get good at that and, have that kind of impact.
You know what I was just about to say? It's quite interesting. Cause normally when I talk to art directors, I'm like, what's it like being ready to put the pen down and, or lead artists or people in these roles will take you past the senior level and you become more of a manager. About the question normally is, well, what's it like? Were you ready to put the pen down? How do you feel? But you're different. You're like, no, I still want to make art. Like, I still have an urge to make art. So, is there so this is going to be an interesting question for you. Being an art director at work, do you have to fight the urge to sometimes want to just make the art yourself? Like, you don't get to a position like where you are without being an incredible artist. So, as an art director who still has the urge to make art, do you sometimes in your day job want to be like, I just want to make art, I could do this, but you'd be like, okay, I'm going to take a backward step and fulfill my role as an art director.
I used to. I think now I think the key thing for me, again, this is going to be different depending on whichever company you work at, whichever role you're in, and how big the company is. An art director role is an art diplomat role. It's a support role. Like, I think people look at director as, oh, you're at the top level, but ultimately you are there to support everyone underneath you. And I think it's the same with a lead role. And I'm kind of glad that a lot more companies are now introducing the lead versus principal path, because that's starting to become a thing. Because before, people thought lead had to be the best artist on the team. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense because that artist on the team is probably spending a third of their time actually doing art and the rest of it managing. So technically, all the other people underneath them should be the best artists on the team. And that person needs to be very good at communicating and very good at managing that team. And there was a bit of a weird kind of barrier or a blur between like a lead and senior, I think, until principal kind of came in. It was, okay, principal's a perfect role because that actually is the mentorship. This person is the best person at that kind of art skill set and can pass those skills on to the rest of the team, whilst the lead does a bit more of the kind of managerial roles. And again, that does depend on its syntax. That depends on where you go. Some companies, the lead role is like the principal role. But for us, it's like, no, if you go down the lead route, you go down the managerial route. If you go down the principal route, you go down the expert path. And they're two separate things.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see, because I agree, like, I love the fact that there's a lead, a principal, and when I see, I've applied to studios where like they want a lead and what they actually want is a principal. They're still a bit old school, and one of the studios I've seen really kind of fly the flag for, okay, these are two separate roles and they're not the same pathways. Was Ubisoft. I saw an artist who started as an environment artist, early 20s, and they were lead, like they got made a lead because they turned out they were really good managers. Like, they were really understood art, they understood the pipelines, they understood time scales, but they were great managers and they wanted to be a manager. And they were made a lead artist. And it's like, it was great because it was kind of a really obvious example of, okay, this isn't the principal artist. This is not necessarily the best artist in the company. It is, they are very good managers and they want to be managers. What's the point in making them go through the rigmarole of going like junior, mid, senior for X amount of years to then be a lead? Like, just make him a lead now. It makes sense. And I'm glad I've seen the industry go this way. And then you see other things as well. There's like advanced artists popping up, and I've seen expert artists, which kind of makes things difficult. Like I'm looking around, I'm like, what does that mean? I need context
Yeah,
to what this
keep it
means.
keep it simple. Yeah, it's great to see. I think there is still a blur, and I'm always wary about looking at years of experience as like, hey, we're going to promote this person based on how many years of experience they've kind of been doing the role. Because again, some people do unfortunately stagnate over years of experience, and that is not an excuse or a reason to push them into a senior or lead level. It's like, no, you're doing your job, but you're not going above and beyond that. Like
Yeah,
you're not proving to us that you can go above and beyond that. So you are ultimately sticking with what your career role has defined you as. Whereas you get some people who come in fresh, or even fresh, younger, doesn't matter. They come in and they just keep excelling, and they excel down that leadership route or that expert route. It's like, you know what, that person is putting in the effort and they should be rewarded for it, or they deserve to do this role. That doesn't mean overtime. I think that's something I do want to clarify. Don't do overtime. I'm not a fan of it. Crunch is bullshit, and if anyone crunches, I'd get angry and annoyed. It's more within their time at work, they are shown to be either effective experts or effective leaders, and then they either go home and do personal art or do whatever. That's entirely up to them. But at their time during their day job, they are performing at their above and beyond their best in their chosen path. And some people do. Some people edge towards the leadership role. I will say though, I do know a lot of leads who have done the leadership role, then gone back to being a senior because they miss doing art. It does happen. I've known art directors who have gone back to being seniorized because they miss art. It happens to some people. But I do enjoy managing. I do enjoy how busy it keeps me. I don't enjoy meetings. Meetings are boring. But I do enjoy like trying to deal and juggle with a lot of problems at once. There is a flip side to that. It does kill your attention span. I found that a
yeah.
lot of leaders and a lot of directors, if they're constant in multitasking, I don't think multitasking can be very good for the brain. Because I find if I'm doing personal work now, I feel as though I jump around quite a lot, like a squirrel on coffee, just like looking everywhere or trying to figure something to kind of distract me. And I'll probably get 5 or 10 minutes of actual work in before 5 minutes has gone down the drain, being distracted by something else. But that might just be a me thing. I don't know. Um,
No,
I used to
unfortunately, I
be
do know
very
what you mean.
focused. I
I
used
know
to
what
be
you
really
mean.
good at just sitting there and time would just go. Whereas now it's like, oh shit, it's the end of the night and I've only done a bit of work. What the hell happened? Oh, this Netflix show got me. That's what happened.
Dude, you know what? It's funny when you say about the multitasking. I've found that with doing like both Art Station and Counterplay, and I'm like, I've tried a million different things for like trying to prioritize time and be careful with my time and management. And it's like, I agree, multitasking isn't a good thing. I think it's very. It's kind of a what's the word? A lie you tell yourself that you're like, oh,
Yeah.
actually, I'm doing like four things at once. Like, I find so far what's worked for me has been just I want to carve out an hour, this hours to this thing, and I'm going to ignore within reason any messages or
Yeah.
emails that come in to do other tasks until I've completed this one. But one thing that was interesting, you mentioned they hate meetings. Now, I'm just curious to know why, because I actually love meetings. I don't know whether it's just because the guys who I'm as you can tell, I'm talkative and I'm very curious and I like to like,
Yeah.
prod and see what people are actually thinking, which isn't necessarily always good in meetings because sometimes I make us go on tangents because I'm like, we'll be talking about a subject. I'm like, oh, said something interesting there though. Like, let's talk about that, and then someone has to wrangle it back to the meeting subject. What do you think meetings just in general like? Is it just they take up a lot of time and you have to sit there and you can't do anything else? Or what is it about them
Um,
that kind of irks you?
it depends. I should have been more specific. It does depend on the meeting.
Yeah.
Like some meetings, because I'm in a lot of meetings. I will
Mm.
probably spend a good 6 hours of my day in meetings every day. And it's a lot of the times it's when it's not. I think it depends on the person, but it's a lot of times it's when something might not be relevant. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to be here for that, maybe not. Obviously, working from home has changed things a little bit because I can do other things in the background. But again, that goes against the rules of trying not to multitask. And I do try and focus more in meetings now. But it depends. It just depends on the meetings. Sometimes it can be stuff that might not concern you, but you have to be there. You have to kind of show yourself as a
Mm.
presence. But I do like the meetings where it's a bit more engaged. And I think that's the key thing. It's like once you're in a meeting where you can have that back and forth, and you know that the outcome of that meeting has has a positive impact, and will have a positive impact on the development process as a whole. I think that's different. I think that's like that's awesome, that's fantastic. But sometimes you're just in a meeting, you're just like, you know, when you have meetings for meeting's sakes, I think that's a common thing in a lot of places. It's like you probably didn't need to have that meeting, but it
Yeah.
happens. I think that's game development in general. That's just a thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it is. And actually, I just want to, again, I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier about them people who you hire, and
Mm.
they're just one of them. They're the ones who are, they're on a rocket ship on an exponential curve. They're workhorses. They're very talented. They've got all, that magic combination. How have you found, and not so much for you personally crafting this, but in companies we've been at over the years, I know it's a sticky subject. It's a tricky one to navigate sometimes, where you do have people come in and they just fly ahead. They go on this exponential curve of development, overtake people or whatever it might be, and it's like keeping that culture healthy is very, very challenging. I've seen it done well, I've seen it done badly. How difficult is it to do that? Because as an artist, and I don't hope I'm not speaking out to it, but our ego is very attached to this industry. We're in the games industry for our ego. We make art, it's attached to our ego a little bit.
Yeah.
So then when some young whippersnapper comes in and then like flies ahead, it's very hard for people not to take this personally sometimes. How have you seen over the years?
It's very tough because this has happened. You don't want to stagnate people. You don't want to tell people, oh, they have to calm down or cool down. I think that there has been. I think the biggest issues I have is when if people take their work home. To kind of, because it's like, oh, I could do more in my spare time. And the big thing that people don't realize is that has an impact on schedules, because if you're getting your work done faster at this quality, you're basically cheating the system. You're basically saying, I've spent an extra 3 or 4 hours each night doing this in my spare time, and physically other people can't keep up. So that, I think, you have to be careful of that. You have to be very careful of that, because that can be incredibly toxic and that can cause a team to kind of break down really quickly. If a person is getting good very quickly at work in their work time and they're putting a lot of effort in their spare time on, say, their own personal projects, I think that's different. I think that's where it's like, okay, how can you translate some of that skill to the rest of your team? Can you mentor other people in the team or show them how you've done things a certain way? So I think it's kind of having that discussion of you are new, you're fresh face, you've come in, you've got really good, you've put in their effort at work. Can you translate those skills to other people and show other people how you've done that? And we do have that within the character team at CAs. Like, people will communicate with each other quite a lot of the time, but also people can be hyper competitive a lot of the time. And sometimes when they're going above and beyond, but maybe not always doing it in their work time, it's like, no, you've got to step back, because you've got to think of the other members in the team who are looking at you and going, we can't keep up because you're doing this externally to when you should be doing it. And then it's kind of like, I never want to stop people from developing, but it's like, hey, you need to kind of clamp down on this a little bit, because there's that issue there of, you're breaking a schedule because production are going to look at your work and go, oh god, this person's amazing, they're going so fast. But it's like, no, you're not. You're artificially going fast. You're actually putting in too much more time than you should be, and it should be scheduled appropriately. And then look at your colleagues and go, okay, this artificial time that I'm integrating into my time might be causing some sort of a mental health detriment to them. So it's just about being sensible. And again, you've got to remember, your art might go in your portfolio, but it's not specifically a portfolio piece. It's a game.
Yeah.
It's a piece of game art. It needs to remain consistent with the art style of the game. So if you're going in spamming tons of greebly little details that you might not necessarily see in game, that might look good in a ZBrush render or a high-end Marmoset render, it's like, well, A, think about how it looks in the game, because a lot of that's just not going to get seen anyway, and B, think about yourself, because I'd rather see people doing personal projects and getting really good at those, because that, I think that personal project kind of helps people express more of their personality than a game project might necessarily do, if that makes sense.
I'd like to dive into this a bit more. So I'm going to be honest, I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm someone who does do a lot of spare stuff in my own time, and just because and I think it's a mindset things. I want to hear like this dived in a bit more, because it might be I've just got a different perception. Because when you said, people, your colleagues looking at you and going, oh, well, I can't work that fast. My point, when I've had this conversation in the past with colleagues, and I've said, we're not competing, we're on the same team. There's the end goal. And we're getting there. I'm just, if I have the capacity, I'll do it 'cause I want to. I enjoy my work,
Yeah.
and me and you aren't racing at all. That shouldn't be the mindset. So I just want to dive into it a little bit more because, like I said, I'm on the other side of the fence, and I think it might be just a perception thing. So can it be framed in a way where it's, it's a scheduling side of thing I do agree with. I have to admit that has come up, and that's a very valid point. It's the bit where it's like, oh, the ex-colleague looking at B colleague and saying, I can't keep up with that, and then they're feeling bad about themselves. Should a conversation not occur to say, hey, you two aren't racing, we're on the same team, it's just the team's moving forward a little bit faster?
Again, it's that Twitter conversation. You might not think it, but it's there. It's there in the back of your head. It's like, this person has made this art and it looks amazing, and everyone's saying it looks amazing, and in the time that I've been given, I can't achieve this, and the only way for me to achieve this, and maybe some people look at it as like a promotion thing, or a thing where it furthers their career into saying, oh, I'm a principal and I'm putting this amount of time. And again, I do want to stress, it's not, when I'm not talking about personal work, I think that you have a certain amount of time for your actual work, like your work, try and get it done then, and then when you go home, work on, if you want to keep doing art, again, like we all do, I sit here and do art every night, it's work on your personal work and develop those skills. But the problem with doing too much of, the problem with trying to race ahead with your work is you've got to think of production. Now, look at it from a producer's point of view. If you've got artist A steaming ahead because they're putting in an extra 3 hours worth of overtime every night, that producer's going to go, that person's work rate is 85% or whatever it is, 100%. This person's work rate is 65%. That person might be putting in the 9 to 5 effort, and they might be doing it fully focused, 100% effort while they're in their work time. And then that producer's going, why is that person not as fast as that person? Because they don't look at it and see that person taking the work home. They're not aware of it. That person could be taking work home, and you might not think it, but some producers will compare the work rate of the individuals and will go to the leads and go, that person's working a lot faster than this person. How can we speed this person up? Because that's can be what a producer's mindset is. I don't want to say that about all producers, because that would be generalizing across the board. I don't want to do that. There's everyone has a different opinion, but I have seen that where it's like, actually, this person's not slow. This person is artificially changing the work rate because they're working on this asset in their spare time. Now, I think there's ultimately a difference between polishing your asset and finishing your asset. Now, if you want to polish your asset, that's different. I think if you want to take your asset a bit further and you want to push it a bit and like push it towards like portfolio quality, that's fine. But just be wary of, A, we do have a schedule. B, it is a game development environment and you're ultimately making a game asset first. And C, think about the mental health of your team members. And I have seen this. I'm not saying this just randomly. I've seen this out of experience. I've seen other team members and had one-to-ones with them go, and then they've said, this person's taking their work home and their work looks amazing, and I can't make my work physically look like that in the time that I've got. And it does have that underlying mental health issue of why aren't I this good? And you see it on Twitter all the time. We talk about this on social media all the time, that imposter syndrome, that, oh, I knocked this sketch out in 15 minutes and it's incredible and amazing. It's like, well, you see time lapses, and it's like, well, it's a time lapse, and you're looking at this with biased eyes because you're looking at it sped up, and you're thinking that this thing was done really, really quickly, and it wasn't. It took hours and days. It's that. I think it's that mental thing that you might not be explicitly stated or immediately visible, but it's definitely there. And there's definitely an environment where you can see people pushing each other, and it's like, I would love to see those artists who are really pushing themselves look at their peers and give them tips and techniques for doing things a certain way and helping push them and drive them so their team's consistency goes up. But ultimately, you also have to think that, on our team especially, we relay from one project into another. So it's Warhammer 1 straight into Warhammer 2. And it's like, it's a long project. Imagine in terms of you trying to keep that upkeep up for every single character, you will also kind of burn out at some point. I mean, this is all me personally speaking. I never want people to look at me and go, oh, he's wrong, blah blah blah. It's like, no, this is just what I've experienced, and what you might have experienced might be completely different. But I kind of think that your work should be left at work, and then when you go home, work on your personal development, work on your own interesting projects, and still further yourself. You don't have to stop. It's entirely up to you, but savor that spare time, and either you use it to do other interests or you use it to push your art skills. But taking your art home, and it is more, the two things for me are the schedule and the mental health as other people, especially if someone goes, your work rate's not as fast as theirs, and you will see that happen. It's that aspect of it, because there is a work rate and a task time attached to things.
So I have empathy for the mental side of stuff, because like I said at the beginning, like I agree, although I frame it as you shouldn't be competing, there is always that underlying narrative for people.
Yeah, it does.
Is that, and I don't want to. There are such things as good and bad producers, or good and bad leads, or whatever it might be. Yep. But when that conversation takes place of X person's working 20 tasks a day, whereas this person's doing only 13 tasks a day, why is that conversation not meant to take place? As a lead says, oh yeah, but that guy's taking his work home, and you don't devalue the person doing 13 tasks a day.
You can't measure it. That's the problem.
Okay.
So you can measure 8 hours of work time a day. You can't measure the additional 3. You don't know what's taking place in that time. You don't know whether, you might, if you've got an artist staying up till 2 a.m. each day trying to speed things up or make things look amazing, it will have a detriment on them. And then if their work does look amazing and people see, and not everyone knows if a colleague is working too late. Not everyone's always aware of it. They might think, God, this person's achieving this in their work time. Why can't I do this? And I think there is that aspect of it there. I think the key thing for me would be, for me personally, again, I have to keep stressing this is my personal point of view. If you want to do this sort of stuff, maybe wait until the assets kind of, because zebra sculpts look quite good anyway in general. They look amazing, and like refine it afterwards. Take it home and think of it as a portfolio piece. Then it's like, this might not make it into the game, but at the end of the day, you might not see that detail in the game anyway because it gets crunched out. It's like, focus on improving the presentation as a portfolio piece, improving the way it looks as a portfolio piece, and then you can show that afterwards. It is I know it's a very touchy, difficult subject. It's one where I will speak to a lot of people, and they'll be like, "No, I should make my work look amazing," and I don't care what other people think. And there's the other side of, you got to think of the team. You've got to think of the mental health of the team, and you've got to think of the consistency of the work, especially if you're in game and this thing is this super hyper detailed piece and everything else doesn't necessarily compare to it. It's like, it's a game product, and no one's telling you to just stop in your spare time. It's more, maybe go from doing your work to doing your personal work or doing personal development work. That's how I look at it.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right, because and to be honest, like I said, even though I am on the other side of the fence, I'm aware of how dangerous it could be. Only because, like, if you'd asked me, if we'd had this conversation 2 years ago, I'd have said, screw it, it's my time, I'll do what I want. If they can't keep up, that's their problem. I'm doing my thing, they do what they want to do, it's my life. Whereas, now working with more teams, it's like, okay, let's be aware of what everyone else is doing. And it's even just like with, I've found the way you talk in just communities. I spend a lot of time in Discords. Yeah. There are, and I was one of them who brag about how much work they could do. I was up at 5 a.m, I work a job, go home, then work with Decagon, and then after that I'll go do personal work, and then I run a podcast, and it's like, look how busy I am. And I had a friend, a guy I sort of who's in the Discord, and he messaged me, he's like, how do I keep up with that? Like, I feel like I'm not keeping up, and I'm like, that's what made me stop and go, this isn't exactly a healthy example. Like, if that's my bandwidth for work, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not the norm. It's not the standard. It's, that's just how I work. Be more aware of how other people perceive it. And it's like, that's something I have noticed more and been more conscious of in Discords and communities. Like, it isn't necessarily a good thing you work that much. Like, you have work-life balance. Like, hey, I've worked 2 jobs. Great. I don't have a social life, but whatever. It's like, that's not necessarily a brag.
Yeah, I mean, think about it in context of. I don't want to speak ill of other companies, but speak about it in terms of companies where you hear stories of people staying in the office because they see all their colleagues staying in the office doing overtime, and it's that
Yeah.
mentality of, oh, I should be doing this, I should be staying late because they're doing this. It's an inherent mental kind of thing. It's like it's like, oh, I'm going to give you this death stare because you're not staying in the office late, but all of your colleagues are, even if you might not
Mm.
have anything to do. There is still a lot of that in the industry, and I think it's a shitty attitude. Not the attitude of the staying late. I think that's just an attitude that needs to be kind of tamed a little bit. But that attitude of guilting people into doing
Yeah.
things, and either being aware that you're guilting people or not being aware of it, but it's something you have to be very wary about because ultimately people's mental health will suffer. And like you were saying, I was the same. I was when I started off in my early 20s, annoying little shit. I was one of those little assholes who'd just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm up till 4 in the morning doing this and blah blah blah." And I sleep 4 hours a night. Granted, I probably sleep like 5.5 hours a night now, but still, it will have its toll on you in the long term, and you just don't see it coming. Sorry, I saw your dog walking in the background.
Nah, Dave's
Bless him.
coming. It's fine.
Bless him. It has an effect, and it will have an effect, and you might not always see it until you start to get significant RSI, or you just find yourself tired all the time, and it will weigh. Be sensible. If you're tired, stop. You find so many artists who just don't. They go, "No, I need this extra 20 minutes to do this and look great, even though my wrist is about to fall off." It's like you gotta learn to think about your health as well.
You think it's
But
because of
that
age and experience, though? Like, I've been thinking
it
about this.
does.
Like,
It
you speak
does.
to young people, younger, it tends to be they're the ones who are like, I don't give a fuck. I'll work into these hours.
Yeah.
It's not until I've got older. I'm like, and I don't know if it's just because people say you're a kid until you're 30, and then you start to be a bit more appreciative of everyone else and maybe a bit more less, what's the word, self-absorbed. But it's been recently. I'm like, maybe I should be worrying about other people a little bit more. I still got like that streak in me to work, but it is. I think age has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where I would feel guilty about having a night off. For
Mm-hmm.
one night, and you feel terrible, and it's not great. And now I'm just starting to be like, screw it, I'm knackered. I'm gonna go watch a film. Like that. That is my. And I feel much happier in general. It's like I've accepted that I've got plenty of time to kind of develop at this and learn at this. Like you said, I might have been in the industry. I did work really hard to get there, but this new thing, it's like I will take this at my own pace and get good at 2D as long as it takes me. But I'm not going to let it kill me because I like to do other things as well. Even and then Friday nights are my night to just go out and have fun. But it's
Mm.
like it is. You do learn that over time, and some people do, and some people don't, and some people will still have that opinion of, well, I can do this and I can do that. It's like that's great for you. I think you have to remember you're part of a team. I think that's
Mm.
the big thing. And I always treat my team as a team and not as a bunch of disparate individuals. That's just not how they function, and they're good at supporting each other. And like you said, you have ups and downs like that where people will steam ahead, or they'll see other people working until their wrists fall off and be like, "Why am I working that hard?" And I think there's just that inherent negative element that's not always talked about. It is probably a bit more on Twitter more often than not. But again, a lot of the colleagues I work with don't use social media that much anyway, so it's not a discussion they're really aware of. Um, but yeah, it's just something to think about, I guess. Whatever
Mm.
someone's decision is, or kind of makeup is going forwards, I think it's worth them at least having that discussion with their colleagues and asking them how they feel, and maybe that would help rather than just listening to Twitter or listening to you or to me. It's like if this is something you notice at your work, ask your colleague. And if it's not a thing, if it's something that is well balanced where you work, that I think that that's different. But from my experience, I just find it can be quite detrimental, and that's why I try and curb. I do curb overtime and crunch. I don't believe in them. I think it just leads to more crunch and more overtime because things get scheduled badly. It's like, oh well, if you could do this in this time, you can do that in this time. It's like, no,
Mm.
I nearly killed myself to do this in this time. Don't do that. It's like schedule things with an appropriate buffer. Make sure there's time for polish, and make sure you're doing. If don't make sure you're doing good personal work. Just try and do personal work if that's what you want to do, and focus focus your attention elsewhere. If you can, have another project on the go. It's always good. Or learn something new. Learn some new tech skills. Learn Unreal. I don't know. Learn an engine. There's always stuff you could do to develop yourself. And it's not always about being the best environmentalized. I think you might find some environmentalized, characterized, and environment. It's like this company in the future might. You might have really good art skills, but they also desire really good shader setup skills in Unreal. And if you've got that, you've got an advantage. So it's like, there's those aspects as well. How good at you working with scans, how good at you with cloth sim, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to think about.
Well, I think it's a good thing that I'm really glad you've come on, because this has been, even just the conversations we've had and discussed, even though we may have different viewpoints on it, I think it's good to people at least talk about it. I think that's the key thing. And you mentioned communication, talking to your colleagues. How do you feel about how do you feel about this? And from my rugby days, I treat my colleagues as my friends. They are like family to me, and not everyone likes that, but that's how I view it. And it's like I should be able to have these difficult conversations with people. Am I working inappropriate? Yeah, actually, I think you are. I think this is how I think, and as friends and as colleagues, you should be able to take that from each other and not hold it against people. Like, take it on, they're just looking out for you and the team. But Baj, dude, it's been a real pleasure talking. This has been a blast.
Yeah, sorry, I know I can go on. I just it's just a trait. Once I start, I just find it very difficult to stop. And again, I'm quite just passionate about the stuff I talk about. So can't help it. So if I have waffled on, I apologise. But yeah, that's just what I do.
No, dude, you know what? I encourage it, because it means I can do less talking, and I can just let you spit some fire. But guys, everyone listening, remember, like, follow, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you next week.